Some people believe that fate works in mysterious ways. I never did until the day I walked into Dr. James Joy's office for what I thought would be a routine physical examination. What he discovered during that checkup wasn't just about my health. It was a truth I'd been hiding from everyone, including myself. And what happened next? Well, it changed both of our lives forever. My name is Daniel Webb, and this is the story of how a simple medical appointment became the beginning of the most profound love I've ever known. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I sat in the sterile waiting room, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. I've been putting off this appointment for months, nearly a year actually. At 28, I considered myself reasonably healthy. I ran 3 times a week, ate relatively well, and rarely got sick. But my insurance company had been sending increasingly aggressive reminders about my overdue annual physical, and my boss had started making pointed comments about workplace wellness requirements. So here I was on a dreary Tuesday afternoon in October, filling out forms that asked invasive questions about my lifestyle, family history, and personal habits. When I reached the section about sexual activity and orientation, my pen hovered over the paper. My hand trembled slightly. Check the box, Daniel, just check it. But I didn't. I left it blank, just like I always did on these forms. Just like I left so many things in my life blank, unmarked, undefined. Daniel Webb, a nurse with kind eyes and purple scrubs, called my name. I followed her down a quarter lined with anatomy posters and hand sanitizer dispensers. The smell of antiseptic mixed with something faintly floral, probably from the plug and air fresheners trying to mask the clinical atmosphere. She took my vitals in a small examination room. Blood pressure slightly elevated, pulse a bit fast, temperature normal. The doctor will be with you shortly, she said with a practiced smile before closing the door behind her. I sat on the crinkly paper covering the examination table, my fingers drumming against my thighs. The room was painted a calming shade of blue-gray with framed prints of peaceful landscapes that were probably meant to relax patients, but only reminded me how confined I felt. 10 minutes past 15. I was considering checking my phone when the door opened. And everything changed. Dr. James Joy was not what I expected. The name on my appointment confirmation had given me no indication of what he'd look like. And I'd been too lazy to Google him beforehand. He appeared to be in his early 30s with sharp cheekbones, dark hair styled with professional precision, and eyes that were simultaneously warm and intensely observant. He wore black-framed glasses that somehow made him look both intellectual and effortlessly attractive. Daniel Webb. He glanced at his tablet, then extended his hand. I'm Dr. Joy, sorry for the wait. We had an emergency earlier that backed everything up. His handshake was firm, confident. His hands were elegant but strong, with long fingers that looked capable and careful. I realized I was staring at them and quickly looked away. No problem, I managed, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. He settled onto the rolling stool, his movements economical and graceful. So I'm seeing. It's been quite a while since your last physical, nearly 3 years, I know. I know I'm terrible about this stuff. You're not alone. His smile was reassuring, not judgmental, but I'm glad you're here now. Let's start with the basics. Any major health concerns? Changes in your overall well-being? Anything that's been bothering you? We went through the standard questions. I answered on autopilot, providing the expected responses about my diet, exercise routine, sleep patterns, but I could feel his attention on me, not just medical observation, but something more perceptive. He wasn't just listening to my words, he was reading between them. Any significant stress in your life? He asked, his pen poised over his tablet. I hesitated. The usual, I guess. Work, life, the general existential dread of modern existence. He laughed, a genuine, unexpected sound that transformed his professional demeanor into something more human. I think there should be a checkbox on these forms by now. Rate your existential dread from 1 to 10. I found myself smiling back. I'd probably check 7. Only 7. You're doing better than most. His expression shifted back to professional focus. I noticed you left some sections of your intake form blank. the sexual health section. Specifically, I know those questions can feel intrusive, but they're important for comprehensive care. Would you be comfortable discussing that with me? My throat tightened. This was the moment I always dreaded the conversation. I always found ways to avoid or deflect. But something about Dr. Joy's approach, direct but not pushy, clinical but compassionate, made me pause instead of immediately shutting down. It's complicated, I said. Finally he nodded, setting down his tablet. Daniel, I want you to know that this is a completely confidential, judgment-free space. Whatever you share with me is protected by doctor-patient privilege, and my only concern is your health and well-being. Many people find these questions difficult, especially when there are aspects of their identity they're still processing or haven't shared openly. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so understanding, made something crack in my chest. He wasn't assuming anything, but he was leaving space for truth. Real truth. I'm gay, I said quietly, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating as they left my mouth. I've never said that to a doctor before. I've barely said it to anyone, Doctor. Joy's expression didn't change except for a subtle softening around his eyes. Thank you for trusting me with that. Can I ask, are you out to people in your life, family, friends? Some friends know sort of. They might suspect it, but we don't really talk about it. I rubbed my hands on my jeans, suddenly aware of how clammy my palms were. My family doesn't know. They're traditional conservative. I don't think they'd understand. That must be incredibly difficult, he said gently, carrying that weight alone. Something about his phrasing alone hit me harder than expected, because he was right. I was alone, not just in the closet, but isolated within it, the walls getting thicker every year. I didn't speak my truth. Let's proceed with the examination, Dr. Joy said, standing. I want to do a thorough physical, including some blood work. Based on what you've shared, I'd also like to discuss preventive care specific to MSM, men who have sex with men, things like PrEP, regular STI screenings, and mental health support, but we'll take this at your pace. The examination was professional and efficient. He checked my reflexes, listened to my heart and lungs, and palpated my abdomen. But when he examined my lymph nodes, gently pressing along my neck, under my jaw, around my collarbone, his brow furrowed slightly. Have you noticed any swelling here? He asked, his fingers carefully probing the side of my neck. No, should I have? He moved to the other side, checking again. His expression was neutral, but I could sense a shift in his focus from routine examination to diagnostic investigation. Your lymph nodes are somewhat enlarged. It could be nothing. Maybe you're fighting off an infection you haven't noticed, but combined with some other things I'm observing. He stepped back, regarding me with those keen, analytical eyes. Daniel, I need to ask you some more specific questions. When was the last time you were tested for HIV? The question hit me like cold water. I've never been tested. His expression remained calm, but I saw concern flicker across his features. Have you been sexually active? Not recently. There was someone about 6 months ago. We were careful. We used protection most of the time, but I trailed off. My heart's starting to pound. You think I might have HIV? I think we need to run some tests, he said carefully. Enlarged lymph nodes can have many causes, and I don't want to jump to conclusions. But given your sexual history and the fact that you've never been tested, it's important we check. I'm also noticing some other potential indicators, minor ones, but enough that I want to be thorough. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thinner. What other indicators? Your weight is down from your last recorded visit 3 years ago, about 15 pounds. You mentioned fatigue, which you attributed to work stress. There's some slight discoloration in your oral mucosa. He sat back down on the stool, rolling closer, so we were at eye level. Daniel, I want you to breathe. We don't know anything yet, but I'm going to order a comprehensive blood panel, including an HIV test along with tests for other STI. We'll also check your immune function, liver enzymes, and overall health markers. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. HIV, AIDS, death. Those were the words flashing through my mind. The fears I'd carried since I first understood my orientation in high school, watching news reports and old documentaries that painted a picture of inevitable tragedy. Daniel, Dr. Joy's voice cut through my spiral. His hand, warm, steady, rested gently on my shoulder. The touch was professional but grounding, a lifeline in the moment I felt myself drowning. Look at me, I did. His eyes behind those glasses were focused entirely on me, steady and reassuring, even if the test comes back positive, and that's still an if. HIV is no longer a death sentence. We have incredible treatments now. People with HIV who are on effective antiretroviral therapy can live completely normal lifespans with undetectable viral loads. Undetectable means untransmittable. Do you understand what I'm saying? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I understood anything except the fear coursing through my veins. I'm going to take care of you, he said, and something about the way he said it, so certain, so personal, made me believe him. Whatever the results show, we'll handle it together. You're not alone in this. The nurse came back in to draw blood. Watch the vials fill with dark red, each one potentially containing answers I wasn't sure I wanted. Dr. Joy explained that rapid HIV tests could provide preliminary results within minutes, but he wanted to run the more comprehensive fourth-generation test that would take a day or two. Can we do both? I asked. The rapid test and the comprehensive one. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Yes, if you want to know today, we can do that. But Daniel, I need you to prepare yourself mentally regardless of the outcome. Can you do that? I don't have a choice, do I? There's always a choice. You could wait for the full results. Sometimes people prefer that, but I'd spent my whole life waiting to be myself, waiting to be honest, waiting for the right moment that never came. I was tired of waiting. Do the rapid test, I said. 20 minutes later, I sat in Dr. Joy's private office, a space that felt more human than the examination room, with books lining one wall, a window overlooking the parking lot, and photos on his desk that I couldn't see clearly from where I sat. He'd given me water and told me to wait while the test was processed. The door opened and he entered, holding a single sheet of paper. His expression was carefully controlled, the professional mask doctors learn to wear when delivering difficult news. My heart stopped. Daniel, he began, then paused, taking the seat across from me rather than behind his desk. The rapid test came back reactive. That means preliminary positive. The words seemed to come from very far away. Positive, HIV positive. This doesn't mean, he continued, but I couldn't hear him roaring in my ears. My vision tunneled. I thought I might vomit or faint or both. Then his hands were on mine, both of them holding my shaking finger steady. Daniel, stay with me. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on, follow my breathing. I focused on his face, on the steady rise and fall of his chest, and tried to match it. Slowly the panic receded enough for me to hear him again. We need the confirmatory test to be certain, he was saying, but I want to be honest with you about what this likely means. Based on the rapid result in your symptoms, you probably have been infected with HIV, but here's what's important. We caught it. We're going to start treatment immediately if the confirmatory test agrees. Modern antiretroviral therapy is remarkably effective. Within a few months, you can have an undetectable viral load, which means you'll be healthy and unable to transmit the virus to others. How? The word came out broken. How did this happen? We were careful. Mostly I thought HIV transmission can occur even with precautions if they're not consistently used, he explained gently. It's not about blame or judgment. It happened and now we address it. I looked down at his hands, still holding mine. They were warm, solid, and real in the midst of my world shattering. Those hands were the only thing keeping me tethered. I need to call you tomorrow, Dr. Joy continued, once we have the confirmatory results, but tonight I want you to go home, process this information, and know that you're going to be okay. Can I ask, do you have someone you can talk to, someone who can be with you? I shook my head. Who could I call? The friends who didn't really know me, the family who didn't know I was gay, the ex-hookup who might have given me this. Then I'm going to give you my personal number, he said, reaching for a prescription pad and Writing quickly, this is highly irregular, but I don't feel comfortable sending you home alone in the state. If you need to talk, if you're struggling tonight, you call me. Okay, I stared at the paper he pressed into my hand, at the neat handwriting spelling out numbers that represented something more than medical protocol. It represented someone caring enough to break the rules. Why are you doing this? I whispered. He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight of personal understanding. Because I know what it's like to feel alone with something that feels too big to carry, because you deserve compassion and support, not just clinical care, and because he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, because I've seen too many people suffer in isolation when they didn't have to. There was something in his tone, something unspoken but significant, a story behind his eyes that I couldn't read but could sense was there. Thank you, I managed. He stood. And I realized our appointment time must have long since expired. I've cleared my schedule for the next patient. Take your time. When you're ready, the front desk we'll schedule your follow-up for tomorrow afternoon. Once we have the full results, we'll discuss treatment options. Then at the door he turned back. Daniel, you're going to survive this. More than survive, you're going to live truly live. Sometimes it takes a crisis to give us permission to finally be honest with ourselves and the world. Don't waste this catalyst. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in his office with a positive HIV test, a phone number that shouldn't have been mine, and the strangest feeling that despite everything falling apart, something else might be beginning to fall into place. The drive home was a blur of autumn colors I didn't really see in traffic, sounds I didn't really hear. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every few minutes, a wave of panic would crash over me, and I'd have to remind myself to breathe, to keep my eyes on the road, to not pull over and completely fall apart. HIV positive, the words kept repeating in my mind like a cruel mantra. I thought about every health class, every cautionary tale, every statistic I'd ever heard about HIV and AIDS. But then I'd remembered Dr. Joy's words: undetectable equals untransmittable. Normal lifespan, you're going to live. And I'd remembered his hands holding mine. My apartment felt emptier than usual when I walked in. I'd lived here for 3 years, but it had never felt like home. Just a place I slept and stored my things. The furniture was minimal, chosen for function rather than comfort. There were no photos on the walls, no personal touches that would reveal anything real about who I was. It was a space designed for hiding, for existing without being seen. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there unsure what to do with myself. Should I eat? I wasn't hungry. Should I watch TV? I couldn't imagine focusing on anything. Should I call someone? My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out and stared at the paper Dr. Joy had given me, now slightly crumpled from being clutched in my fist during the drive. His personal number, an offering of connection when I had none. I shouldn't call him. It was inappropriate. He was my doctor. He'd already gone beyond professional boundaries by giving me his number. I should call a helpline, a counselor, someone designated for this kind of crisis. But I didn't want to talk to someone trained in crisis management with practiced phrases of comfort. I wanted him. The realization was startling in its clarity. After one appointment, one conversation, one moment of human kindness, I wanted to hear his voice again, to feel less alone. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my living room. I made myself eat something, crackers and cheese. Mechanical bites I barely tasted. I showered, watching water swirl down the drain and imagining I could wash away the diagnosis, the fear, the years of pretending. By 9 p.m. I'd given up on the idea of sleep. I was lying on my couch, staring at the ceiling when the darkness became too much to bear alone. I dialed his number before I could overthink it. He answered on the second ring. Daniel. Just hearing him say my name made something loosen in my chest. I'm sorry for calling. I know it's late. Don't apologize. I gave you this number because I wanted you to use it. How are you doing? His voice was different on the phone, softer, less formal. I could hear what sounded like quiet music in the background. Classical piano, maybe. Honestly, I'm terrified. I keep spiraling, thinking about everything that could go wrong, and I feel so stupid for not being more careful, for not getting tested sooner. For stop, he said gently but firmly. Self-blame isn't useful right now. What happened has happened. The only thing that matters is moving forward. How do I do that? How do I just move forward when everything feels like it's falling apart? One moment at a time, one breath at a time. I heard movement on his end, like he was settling into a chair. Can I tell you something? Not as your doctor, but as someone who understands what you're going through, please. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a vulnerability I hadn't heard before. When I was 25, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. It wasn't HIV, but it was chronic, incurable, and it meant my life would never be what I'd planned. I had to take daily medication. I had to completely change my lifestyle, and I had to come to terms with the fact that my body had betrayed me in some fundamental way. I sat up, phone pressed tied to my ear, hanging on every word. I spent months angry and depressed, he continued. I pulled away from everyone who cared about me. I almost quit medical school. Because I thought, what was the point? Why help other people with their health when I couldn't even fix my own? But then someone, a mentor, told me something that changed my perspective. He said that our greatest struggles can become our greatest sources of strength and empathy if we let them. That the broken places, when healed, are often the strongest parts of us. Do you believe that? I asked quietly. I do now. It took time, but yes, my condition taught me to be a better doctor, to really see my patients as whole people, not just symptoms to treat. It taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. He paused. Daniel, what you're facing is scary, but it's also an opportunity to live authentically, to stop hiding, to build a life that's truly yours. I don't know how to do that. Neither did I, but you learn. You take small steps. You find people who support you. You be honest first with yourself and then with others. His voice softened even more. You called me tonight because you needed someone to talk to. That was a step. You told me you're gay when you've barely told anyone. That was a step. Keep taking steps, and eventually you'll find yourself somewhere completely different than where you started. We talked for over an hour. He told me more about his own health journey, the challenges of being a doctor with a chronic condition, the importance of mental health alongside physical treatment. I told him about growing up in a conservative small town, about knowing I was different from a young age, about the relationship with another man that had been brief and festive and filled with shame. He wouldn't want to be seen with me in public. I said we'd meet at his place late at night and I'd leave before morning. It was exciting at first, but then it just felt hollow, like I was collaborating in my own invisibility. You deserve more than that, Dr. Joy said with quiet intensity. You deserve to be seen, celebrated, loved openly. The word loved hung in the air between us, charged with something neither of us acknowledged, but both felt I should let you go. I finally said, though I didn't want to. You've already spent your entire evening talking me off a ledge. I've spent my evening talking with someone I care about. There's a difference. Before I could process that statement, he continued. Tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. my office. We'll have your results. We'll make a plan and you won't go through this alone. Okay, try to get some sleep, Daniel, and if you can't call me back, I mean it. After we hung up, I sat holding the phone, feeling the warmth of his words settling into my chest like medicine. For the first time since the diagnosis, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt held, supported, seen. I slept better than I expected, waking to golden October sunlight streaming through my windows. Work felt surreal. I went through the motions of my job in marketing, attending meetings, and responding to emails while my mind was elsewhere. No one seemed to notice my distraction. Why would they? I perfected the art of seeming fine while falling apart. T2:30, I left early, citing a doctor's appointment. The receptionist at the medical office recognized me and smiled warmly, directing me straight to Dr. Joy's office rather than the waiting room. He stood when I entered, and for a moment we just looked at each other. In the daylight, I noticed details I'd missed before. The slight silver at his temples, the laugh lines around his Eyes, the way he carried himself with both professional authority and genuine warmth. Daniel, come in, sit down. He gestured to the same chair I'd occupied. Yesterday, how are you feeling today? Less panicked. Thanks to you, he smiled. But it was tinged with seriousness as he looked at his computer screen. I have your confirmatory test results. As expected, they confirmed the rapid test. You are HIV positive, but there's more information now that's actually quite helpful. He turned the monitor so I could see it, though the medical terminology meant little to me. Your viral load is relatively low, and your CD4 count, which measures immune function, is still in a good range. This suggests the infection is fairly recent. Probably within the past 3 to 6 months, which aligns with when you said you were last sexually active. Is that good? Yes. It means we're catching this early before significant immune damage has occurred. We're going to start you on antiretroviral therapy immediately, a single pill once daily. Most people tolerate it very well with minimal side effects. Within 2 to 3 months, we should see your viral load drop to undetectable levels. He walked me through the treatment plan with patience and clarity, answering every question, addressing every concern. But beneath the medical discussion, there was something else, a current of connection that had nothing to do with diagnosis and everything to do with two people truly seeing each other. I need to ask you something difficult, he said after we'd covered the medical aspects. We need to notify your previous sexual partner. You don't have to do it personally if you don't want to. There are anonymous notification services, but it's important that he gets tested. My stomach clenched. I don't even know his last name. It was we met on an app. Hooked up a few times, never exchanged much personal information. Dr. Joy nodded without judgment. That's okay. Do what you can to reach out, but don't put yourself in a difficult position. The next question is about disclosure. Moving forward, legally and ethically, you'll need to inform any future sexual partners of your status before being intimate, but beyond that, disclosure is personal. Some people are very open about their status. Others tell only those who need to know. What about work? Do I have to tell my employer? Absolutely not, unless your job involves specific situations where it could be relevant, which is extremely rare. Your HIV status is protected health information. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, closing the physical distance between us. Daniel, I want to talk about something beyond the medical aspects. Your mental health through this is just as important as your physical health. Have you thought about seeing a therapist, particularly someone who specializes in LGBTQ+ issues? I've never been to therapy. I think it could really help processing this diagnosis. Working through your feelings about your sexuality, learning to live authentically, that's a lot to handle alone. He hesitated, then added, I can recommend someone excellent if you're interested. She's helped a lot of my patients through similar situations. Your patients, you mean other gay men? With HIV, some, yes, but also LGBTQ+. Individuals dealing with various health issues and life challenges. She understands the specific pressures of living in the closet, the fear of rejection, the internalized shame many of us carry, the phrase many of us registered immediately, us not them, us. My eyes met his, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between us, a recognition, a shared understanding. Ah. You, I started, then stopped, unsure if I was crossing a line. Gay, yes, he said. It's simply, matter-of-factly, I don't usually disclose personal information to patients, but in your case, I think it's relevant. I understand the journey you're on because I've walked a version of it myself. I came out in college, which was easier in some ways than what you're facing now, but it wasn't without challenges. Does your family know? Shadow crossed his face. Now they do. It took years and the relationships are complicated. My parents are Chinese immigrants, very traditional. They had certain expectations for my life that didn't include having a gay son. We're cordial now but distant. It's one of my greatest regrets that I can't have both. Being fully myself and having their full acceptance. I'm sorry, don't be. It was my choice and I'd make it again. Living honestly is worth the cost, even when That cost is painful. He stood moving to the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light. Daniel, I'm telling you this not to make this about me, but to help you understand that you're not alone. There's an entire community of people who understand what you're going through. You just have to reach out and find them. I joined him at the window. We stood side by side looking out at the parking lot, the trees beginning to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. The ordinary world continuing its ordinary day, while mine had transformed completely. I'm scared, I admit it, not just of HIV, but of everything else. Coming out, losing people, being rejected. I spent so long being invisible that I don't know how to be seen. Start small. Start with people you trust. Start with yourself. He turned to face me, and we were suddenly very close enough that I could see gold flecks chucks in his brown eyes, close enough to catch the subtle scent of his cologne. You've already started. Actually, you trusted me with your truth. That takes tremendous courage. You made it easy to trust you. Good. His voice had dropped to something softer, more intimate. I want you to feel safe with me, not just as your doctor, but as someone who genuinely cares about your well-being. The air between us felt charged, electric. I wondered if he felt it too, this pull that seemed to exist outside the bounds of medical professionalism, patient care. Appropriate boundaries. A knock at the door shattered the moment. A nurse poked her head in. Dr. Joy, your 3:30 is here. Thank you, Kesha, I'll be right there. He stepped back, creating professional distance again. Daniel, let's schedule a follow-up in 2 weeks to see how you're adjusting to the medication. In the meantime, you have my number. Use it if you need to. At the door, I turned back. Dr. Joy James, thank you for everything, for seeing me. His smile was warm and genuine. I see you, Daniel, and I'm honored that you're letting me. The next 2 weeks were transformative in ways I couldn't have predicted. The medication made me slightly nauseous for the first few days, but Adrian had warned me that might happen, and the side effects faded quickly. What didn't fade was the strange sense of clarity that had settled over me since the diagnosis. It was as if learning I had HIV had paradoxically made me feel more alive. I started going to a support group for LGBTQ+ individuals living with HIV, something Adrian had gently encouraged. The first meeting was terrifying, walking into a community center, introducing myself, admitting out loud to a room full of strangers that I was gay and HIV positive, but the acceptance I found there was immediate and unconditional. These were people who understood, who'd walked the same path, who offered wisdom earned through their own struggles. I also started seeing Dr. Miranda Reeves, the therapist Adrian had recommended. She was exactly what I needed, direct but compassionate, challenging but supportive. In our sessions, we unpacked years of internalized shame, explored my fear of rejection, and worked on building authentic connections. You've been living in survival mode, she told me during our third session, just getting through each day without being truly present in your own life. The diagnosis, as difficult as it is, has given you permission to stop surviving and start living. Don't waste that gift. But the most unexpected aspect of those 2 weeks was my evolving relationship with Adrian. Started with text messages. He'd check in every few days to ask how I was adjusting to the medication, if I had any concerns, how I was doing emotionally. The messages were professional at first, but gradually they became more personal. We'd text about books we were reading, shows we were watching, random observations about life. Then the texts turned into phone calls, long conversations late at night. When we should both have been sleeping, we talked about everything and nothing. His work, my job, our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. He told me about losing a patient early in his career and how it nearly broke him. I told him about my first crush on a boy in high school and how I'd spent years convincing myself it wasn't real. When did you know? I asked him one night, lying in bed with the phone pressed to my ear, his voice a comfort in the darkness, that I was gay. I think I always knew, but I accepted it when I was 16. I had a friend, Daniel. He was everything. I wasn't confident, athletic, popular, and I was completely in love with him, even though I didn't have the words for it yet. One day after swim practice, we were alone in the locker room and he kissed me. What happened? We dated secretly for a year. He was terrified of anyone finding out. So we hit. Eventually, he decided it was too risky and broke things off. Told me he'd made a mistake, that he wasn't actually gay. That we should forget it happened. It devastated me, but it also clarified everything. I knew I couldn't live like that, hiding, pretending, denying myself, so I came out to my friends than my family and decided I'd rather be alone and honest than partnered and invisible. Have you been alone since then? He was quiet for a moment. I've dated, had a few serious relationships, but nothing that lasted. Being a doctor is demanding, and finding someone who understands that, who also shares my values and vision for life, has been challenging. Plus, I think I'm picky. I don't want to settle for anything less than a real deep connection. That doesn't sound picky. That sounds wise, maybe, or maybe I'm just scared of getting hurt again. His voice carried a vulnerability that made my chest ache. What about you? Has there been anyone besides the guy from the app? No one serious, a few encounters that were more about validation than connection. I think I was trying to prove something to myself, that I could be gay without actually being gay, if that makes sense. Like if it was just physical, just bodies in the dark, it didn't count. I didn't have to claim it as part of my identity. And now I realize I can't separate myself into pieces. This part straight, this part gay, this part acceptable, this part shameful. I'm just me, all of it together, and either people accept that or they don't. Daniel, that's growth, real significant growth, the warmth in his voice made me smile in the darkness. I have a good teacher. I'm not teaching you anything, I'm just walking alongside you while you teach yourself. These conversations became the highlight of my days. I found myself looking forward to the moment when my phone would light up with his name, when I'd hear his voice and feel less alone in the world. But I also knew we were walking a dangerous line. He was my doctor. There were ethical boundaries, professional guidelines, power dynamics that made any romantic connection inappropriate. Yet with every conversation, every shared vulnerability, every moment of laughter or understanding, those boundaries felt less like protection and more like prison bars. My 2-week follow-up appointment arrived on a Friday afternoon. I'd been on medication for 14 days and James wanted to check my initial response to treatment. I walked into his office with a strange mixture of anticipation and nervousness. He looked tired when I entered, like he'd been working too many hours, but his face lit up when he saw me, a genuine smile that transformed his exhaustion into something warm. Daniel, you look good. Really good. Actually, I feel good, better than I have in years, honestly. We went through the medical updates. My viral load had already dropped significantly, a promising early response to treatment. My side effects had resolved. Physically, I was doing exactly what we'd hoped. This is excellent progress, James said, reviewing the results. Keep this up and you'll be undetectable within another month or 2. How are you doing emotionally? How's therapy going? It's intense but helpful. Dr. Reeves doesn't let me hide from anything. She keeps pushing me to be honest with myself about what I want, who I am, what kind of life I'm building, and what do you want? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning beyond the therapeutic context. I met his eyes and saw my own longing reflected back at me. I want to stop being afraid, I said quietly. I want to tell my family who I am, even if they reject me. I want to find real connection with someone. Not hiding, not pretending, just real. I want to feel like I'm living my life instead of watching it pass by from behind a glass wall. James was very still, his gaze locked on mine. Those are beautiful goals, Daniel. You deserve all of that, James. I need to tell you something. My heart was pounding, but I pushed forward. These past 2 weeks, talking to you, getting to know you, it's meant everything to me. You've given me more than medical care. You've given me hope and friendship and understanding. But I also need to be honest that what I'm feeling is becoming more than friendship. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were filled with conflict. Daniel, I know this is complicated and probably inappropriate, and there are rules about this, but I also know that I'm tired of hiding how I feel about things, and I feel something for you. Something real. I feel it too. The admission seemed pulled from somewhere deep inside him. God help me, I feel it. 2. But Daniel, I'm your doctor. There are ethical boundaries I can't cross. The power dynamic, the professional responsibility. I could lose my medical license, and more importantly, you're vulnerable right now. You're dealing with a major health diagnosis, coming to terms with your identity. Your feelings might be complicated by all of that. Don't do that, I said firmly. Don't dismiss what I'm feeling as some kind of transference or vulnerability response. I'm not confused about this. I know what I feel. He stood, packing to the window. The same window where we'd stood close enough to touch 2 weeks ago. Even if we both feel this way, acting on it, while I'm your doctor, would be wrong. It would violate the trust inherent in our relationship. It could harm you, even if that's the last thing either of us wants. Then stop being my doctor. He turned, shock clear on his face. What? Refer me to another physician. Transfer my care to someone else in the practice. Then we wouldn't have that barrier anymore. Daniel, it's not that simple. The ethical guidelines suggest waiting a minimum amount of time after the physician-patient relationship ends before pursuing anything personal, usually at least a year, sometimes longer depending on the circumstances. The thought of waiting a year, of continuing to talk and connect and pretend we didn't feel what we felt, seemed impossible. Even then, it's complicated. Medical ethics aren't just about legal liability, they're about preventing harm. You came to me during a crisis, trusting me with your most vulnerable moments. If I take advantage of that by pursuing a relationship even after transferring your care, it raises questions about my motives and professionalism. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the conflict warring in his expression. James, I know you would never take advantage of me. I know your motives are genuine, and I know what I feel isn't because you're my doctor, it's because you're you. You're kind and intelligent, and you see me in a way no one else ever has. That's not about your position or my vulnerability. That's about connection, real human connection. Daniel, his voice was painful. I want this too, more than you. No, but I can't risk hurting you. I can't compromise the care you need, and I can't violate the ethical principles I've built my career on. We stood there, inches apart, the air thick with everything we wanted but couldn't have. I could see the war in his eyes. Duty versus desire, professionalism versus connection. What if we wait? I said. Finally, what if I transfer to another doctor for my HIV care and we wait for the appropriate time? If what we feel is real, it'll still be there in 6 months. Or a year, and if we talk every day during that time, if we continue building this connection, the ethics board could still argue I was pursuing a relationship while technically still in a position of power. He ran his hand through his hair, frustration evident. I've thought about this constantly, Daniel. I've looked up the guidelines, consulted with colleagues, hypothetically. There's no clear answer that doesn't involve significant waiting and total separation. The words felt like a knife. If we want to eventually be together, and I do want that, I need you to know I want that, then we need to establish clear boundaries now. I should transfer your care, and we should stop talking outside of necessary medical transition communications. Then after an appropriate period, we could reconnect and see if what we feel still exists. That's not fair, I said, my voice breaking. I just found you. I just found someone who makes me feel seen and understood and like I'm not alone. And now you're saying we have to lose that to potentially have something later. I'm saying we have to protect both of us. If we continue the way we have been, we're walking an ethical line that could end badly. I could lose my license. You could be hurt. The relationship could be tainted by the circumstances of how it began. But if we do this right, if we wait, if we give you time to heal and establish care elsewhere, if we remove the power dynamic, then whatever we build will be on solid ground. I knew he was right. Logically, intellectually, I understood every word he said, but emotionally it felt like being torn apart. How long? I asked. 6 months. Minimum, a year would be better. I know that seems like forever, but Daniel, if this is real, if we're real, then we'll survive the wait and you'll have that time to continue your journey, to come out to your family, to build your support system, to become secure in your identity independent of any Relationship, you need that time for yourself and you're just going to wait, not date anyone else. Just wait, a small, sad smile crossed his face. I've been waiting for someone like you for longer than 6 months, Daniel. I can wait a little longer to do this, right? The transfer of my care happened within the week. Adrian connected me with Dr. Sarah Patel, another physician in the practice who specialized in HIV treatment. She was excellent, knowledgeable, compassionate, thorough, but she wasn't James. We stopped texting, stopped calling, cut off all communication except for one brief professional email where he provided Dr. Patel with my medical history and wished me well. The silence was excruciating. But something else was happening too. Without James as my constant support, I was forced to build other connections, to lean on other people, to develop strength I didn't know I had. I came out to my sister first, called her on a random Tuesday evening and just said, "Sarah, I'm gay and I'm HIV positive and I need you to know." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought she'd hung up then. Okay, thank you for telling me I love you. Nothing changes that. We cried together over the phone. She asked questions, some I could answer, some I couldn't. She admitted she'd suspected I was gay for years, but hadn't known how to bring it up. She offered to come visit, to be there. However I needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was acceptance. It was love emboldened. I came out to my parents via letter. I couldn't do it face to face or voice to voice. I needed to say everything without interruption, without seeing their initial reactions. I wrote about my sexuality, about the diagnosis, about the life I was building. Their response took 2 weeks. My father's email was brief and cold. "We need time to process this. We'll contact you when we're ready." It hurt. God, it hurts, but I'd expected it, and I had support systems in place now. My sister, my support group, my therapist. I wasn't alone in the pain. My mother's response came separately. A few days later, "This isn't what we wanted for you, and we're struggling to understand, but you're our son. We need time, but we're not going anywhere." Not acceptance, but not rejection either. A door left open. However, slightly. Work was easier. I didn't owe them disclosure about my health or sexuality, so I simply continued doing my job, but with more confidence. I joined the company's Pride Employee Resource Group. I put a small rainbow pin on my laptop bag. Small steps toward visibility. The months passed slowly. I threw myself into therapy, into my support group, into building a life that felt authentically mine. I started dating casually, nothing serious, just meeting other gay men, learning how to navigate that world without shame. Some dates were awkward. Some were fun. None of them were Adrian, because through it all, through every milestone and challenge, I thought about him. I wondered if he was thinking about me, wondered if the connection we'd felt was surviving the separation. 6 months to the day after our last conversation, I walked into a coffee shop downtown and saw him sitting by the window. He looked different. His hair was slightly longer. He wasn't wearing his glasses, and he looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him in his office. But when he saw me, his face transformed with a smile that made my heart skip. "Daniel, James." We stood awkwardly for a moment, then both moved at the same time for a hug. It was careful, brief, but the warmth of his body against mine felt like coming home. "You look amazing," he said, stepping back to really look at me. "Healthy, happy, strong. I've been working on myself. Therapy, support group, living. Honestly, it's been hard but good. I've been following your progress through Dr. Patel. She speaks highly of you, said you're an ideal patient." He gestured to the table. "Sit, please. I've been looking forward to this for months." We sat across from each other, coffee between us, and just looked at each other for a moment. There was so much to say, but also no need to rush. So he began. 6 months. Did you date anyone? "A few dates, nothing serious." "You same. Went out with a couple people." But he shrugged. "My heart wasn't in it. I kept comparing everyone to you. Did they measure up? Not even close." His smile was tender. "Daniel, I need to know, is this still what you want? 6 months is a long time. People change. Feelings change. If you've moved on or realize this isn't right for you, I'll understand." I reached across the table and took his hand. his fingers immediately intertwined with mine, warm and familiar despite the months apart. I haven't moved on, I've moved forward. Grown, healed, and become more myself, but what I feel for you hasn't changed. If anything, it's stronger because now I know it's not dependent on you being my doctor or my support during a crisis. It's just you, I want you. His eyes glisten. I want you too, I've wanted you since that first appointment, if I'm being honest. The way you were so scared, but so brave, so vulnerable, but so strong, you captivated me immediately, and then every conversation we had just deepened what I felt. So, what do we do now? Now we date properly. We take our time, get to know each other. Outside of crisis and medicine, we build something real, something that's ours. Something with no ethical complications or power dynamics. He squeezed my hand. I want to take you to dinner. I want to hold your hand in public. I want to introduce you to my friends. I want to hear about your day and share mine. I want all the normal, beautiful things that come with being with someone. That sounds perfect. We stayed in that coffee shop for hours talking like we used to. Late at night on the phone, but better because we could see each other, touch each other, and exist in the same space. Without barriers, when we finally left, he walked me to my car. At the driver's side door, he stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. Can I kiss you? I answered by closing the distance between us. Our first kiss was soft and tentative, learning the shape of each other's lips, the rhythm of each other's breathing. Then it deepened. 6 months of longing and restraint melting into connection. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. I've wanted to do that since that day in my office, he admitted, when I was having a panic attack about my diagnosis, when you were brave enough to be vulnerable, when you looked at me with those eyes, and I saw your whole, beautiful, complicated soul. He cupped my face gently. I fell for you that day, Daniel, and I'm so grateful we waited to do this right. I moved through the farmer's market with Adrian's hand in mine, completely comfortable in my own skin for the first time in my life. We'd been officially together for 6 months, and it had been the easiest, most natural relationship I'd ever experienced. My viral load had been undetectable for 8 months. My CD4 count was completely normal. I was healthy physically, emotionally, mentally. My relationship with my family was still complicated but improving. My parents had started attending flag meetings, trying to understand. My sister had become one of my biggest advocates, and she loved Adrian. I'd been promoted at work. I'd made real friends in the LGBTQ+ community. I'd built a life that felt full and authentic in mine. But the best part was the man beside me selecting fresh vegetables and making jokes about my inability to cook anything beyond pasta. The man who'd seen me at my most vulnerable and loved me anyway. The man who'd waited, who'd done everything right, who'd prioritized my well-being, even when it cost him what he wanted. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, catching me staring at him. Just how different my life is from a year ago. How terrified I was in your office that day, thinking my world was ending. And now I realize it wasn't ending, it was beginning. I pulled him close, kissing him right there among the vegetable stands and flower stalls, not caring who saw. You told me that my diagnosis could be a catalyst for living authentically. You were right. You did the work, Daniel. You made the choice to live honestly, to be brave, to build this life. I just walked alongside you. You're more than that. You're my partner, my love, my person. His eyes softened. Say that again. You're my person, James Joy. And I love you too. He kissed me again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Come on, let's go home and attempt to cook this food without burning down my kitchen. Our kitchen, I corrected. I'd moved in with him 3 weeks ago, and it still felt surreal and wonderful. Our kitchen, he agreed with a smile that lit up his whole face. We walked through the market together, to men in love, visible and unashamed. Journey had been painful, HIV positive, coming out, rebuilding relationships, waiting for the right time, but it had led me here, to health, to authenticity, to love. During my checkup, the doctor had discovered more than a virus. He discovered me, the real me that had been hiding all along, and in the process, we discovered each other. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives crack us open, just enough to let the light in. Sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beautiful, terrifying, transformative beginning, and sometimes when you're brave enough to be seen, you find someone who's been waiting to see you all along. Thanks for watching.